Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Amna Gul from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. We're back with the course Communication Theories 2, bearing the code GMC 312. It's our 15th lecture, and the topic today is Scientific Method and Human Behavior. We'll be actually discussing how theories make sense of the social world around us, and I'll be starting with something as important and as familiar to you as Facebook. Okay, so I'll relate things with it now. See, social networking site Facebook debuted on the internet in 2003. Within 5 years, it grew to 100 million users, and in October 2012, the company proudly announced it had 1 billion members visiting monthly, networking in over 70 languages. Upon reaching that milestone, Facebook released a video likening its brand to bridges, airplanes, and the universe. Critics easily saw the connection to bridges and planes. Like social networking, they bring people together. Like bridges tend to bring people together because you can cross from one area to another, you can reach there. Same is the case with airplanes, that they actually work as taking you from one place to another. They build connections, they kind of work like that. But the question of universe, like 1 billion folks is a lot, but it's hardly the universe. Maybe the point was that Facebook's citizens represent a universe unto themselves. But it must be a strange universe indeed, with all those kids posting what they had for lunch, gossiping, and posting party pictures. If in fact that was who populated the world of Facebook. It's not. 46%, yes, 46% of Facebookers are over 45 years old, are more than 5 years old, 45 years old. That's why I've used this greater than sign on the slide. And this, its fastest growing age segment, is larger than the 0 to 34-year-olds, which is 42%. And everyone assumes these up to 34 years age people are the heaviest consumers. It is not like that. So things are different. So maybe the typical Facebooker isn't what we usually think of them. We consider who uses the site. So what else do we want to know about these 1 billion users? How many friends does a typical Facebooker have? About 130. It's like through research, okay? But now this raises another question. What exactly is a friend? If you can have 130 of them, are they really friends? Now, Facebook actually fosters a sense of belonging and lets people express themselves as they would like to. These are the two obvious functions served by real friends. But in a billion-person universe, there have to be a lot of different kinds of people looking for different things from their online friendships. Of course, there are. Psychologists claim that narcissists and people with low self-esteem spend more time on Facebook than do others. But there are still other psychologists who actually say that maybe personality differences have little to do with why people use Facebook, rather than using the site to compensate for aspects of their offline personalities. Users simply carry those everyday characteristics over to their online selves. Clearly, Facebook is a useful medium to lots of people. Many log on to the site several times every day and constantly post updates. Like, you might be thinking about yourself right now, okay, how many times do you log in? And if you have just to wait, for example, in the Suzuki or somewhere for 5 minutes, and you tend to log in directly, maybe let it be for 2 minutes even, and you log into Facebook. So you'll be thinking about yourselves, and I want you to think about it. Now, most users don't give much thought to what they are doing and why. Like, if they are asked, most say that they are simply passing time or being entertained or engaging in casual communication with friends and family. But could Facebook be more important than they realize? What about your own use of Facebook? Is it making an important difference in your life, or is it just another way to pass time? Think about it. Okay, how do you view the company that provides you with Facebook? Do you know how it earns a profit from the services it provides? If you regularly upload lots of personal information, you're trusting that the company will not misuse this information and will provide you with the level of privacy that you want. But should you be so trusting? Facebook is a private company, and it aggressively seeks to earn profits by selling information and giving advertisers access to its users. Should you care more about what Facebook does with the information you provide? Now, your answers to these questions are naturally based on your ideas or assumptions about Facebook, its users, and your own experiences. Now, you can take into account what your friends say about Facebook and what you happen to read in the media. You might wonder if what you think is happening for you and your friends is the same as for all those old people Facebook says are there. Psychologists had their ideas and assumptions too, but they moved beyond their immediate personal experience to conduct research. They collected data and systematically assessed the usefulness of their ideas. They engaged in social science, working together with others in a research community. They are seeking to develop a formal, systematic set of ideas about Facebook and its role in the real world or in the social world. They are helping to develop a mass communication theory. So this is how actually things work out. Okay, like, we have discussed things a lot, but actually we needed to discuss it from your very perspective, how your perspective actually comes in. Now, having understood where mass communication is, I would like to redefine mass communication. Now, when an organization employs a technology as a medium to communicate with a large audience, mass communication is said to have occurred. Like, this is a very simple definition. Now, the professionalists, for example, at the News International, which is an organization, use printing presses and the newspaper, which is technology and medium, to reach their readers, which is a large audience. This is good enough explanation. So the writers, producers, filmmakers, and other professionals, for example, at Cartoon Network, use various audio and video technologies, satellites, cable television, and home receivers to communicate with their audiences. Warner Brothers places ads in magazines to tell readers what movies it is releasing, and it distributes those movies to local theaters where they are viewed by audiences. But as you no doubt know, the mass communication environment is changing quite radically. When you receive a piece of direct mail advertising addressed to you by name and in which your name is used throughout, you are an audience of one not the large audience envisioned in traditional notions of mass communication. You might be receiving such direct mail in your emails, like there are a lot of things coming through, and they like put your name in it, and it's like that. When you sit at your computer and you post a comment, or when you use your, for example, smartphone, and you post a comment to a news story that is read by thousands of other readers, you're obviously communicating with a large audience. But you're not an organization in the sense of a newspaper or cable television network or movie studio. See, now there are differences. The availability of lightweight, portable, inexpensive video equipment, quite possibly your smartphone, combined with the development of easy to use internet video sites like YouTube, makes it possible for an everyday person like you to be a television writer and producer, reaching audiences numbering in tens of millions. Although most theories we'll study were developed before our modern communications revolution, many are still quite useful. But we must remember that much has changed and is changing in how people use technologies to communicate. One useful way is to think of mediated communication as existing on a continuum that stretches from interpersonal communication at one end to traditional forms of mass communication at the other end, where different media fall along this continuum depends on the amount of control and involvement people have in the communication process. The telephone, for example, let's take the telephone, which is the phone, which is traditionally understood, not the one that you might own that has internet access, GPS, and some other like dozens of killer apps. So the telephone sits at one end. It is obviously communication technology, but one that is most typical of interpersonal communication. At most, very few people can be involved in communicating at any given time, and they have a great deal of involvement with and control over that communication. The conversation is theirs and they determine its content. Now, let's compare it with a big budget Hollywood movie. It sits on the opposite side of the pole. Viewers have limited control over the communication that occurs. Certainly, people can choose to direct however much attention they wish to the screen. They can choose to actively seek meaning from the media content, or they can choose to passively decode it. But their control and involvement cannot directly alter the content of the messages being transmitted. Message content is centrally controlled by media organizations. New communication technologies are thus rapidly filling in the middle of the continuum between telephone and television. Suddenly, media consumers have the power to alter message content if they are willing to invest the time and have the necessary skills and resources. Audiences are choosing to be active in ways that are hard to anticipate, and the consequences of their activity may not be understood for decades to come. The rise of social networking and YouTube demonstrates an ever-growing willingness to use media to share content and perspectives on content. The ongoing popularity of downloading music and the Apple iPod show a willingness to invest the time, acquire the skills, and purchase the technology necessary to take greater control over music. These forms of audience activities have enabled media companies like Apple, Google, and Facebook to become dominant forces in the media world, previously dominated by the likes of Disney, News Corporation, and Time Warner. New media companies are competing to provide innovative and useful technologies that deliver more attractive services. These technologies and services will give us new ways to create and control content that is important to us. As this happens, there will be profound consequences for our personal lives, the media industries, and the larger social world. Now, this takes us to the next point, which is science and human behavior. And this is our main point here. This was all the prelude to it. See, our society is a society that is that generally respects and believes its scientists. So, science is one of the fundamental reasons why we enjoy our admirable standard of living and have a growing understanding of the world around us. Like, there are certain people who actually tend to compare. You come across certain things on social media as well. That, for example, if we were to compare our lives with, for example, pharaohs or with Namrud and stuff, so our lives are far more luxurious, because like just think about this cold water or having these air conditioners or vehicles that can take you long distances in very short time. So this is a lot of luxury that we are enjoying. Or you can have so many things where you have automatic controls on it. You just put something in the microwave and it's like hot within seconds. Or there are so many, now we do have these auto cookers, and there's a lot of stuff. So actually science is the basis for why we enjoy the standard of living that we are having. But not all scientists or the science that they practice are understood or revered equally. Like, not all scientists are equally respected. The physical scientists and engineers are the dreamers, the fixers, the guardians. They are the future. They have sent us photos of stars burning, detailed the inner workings of the atom, and invented the microwave oven, the World Wide Web, and cell phones that take and send video. So we're in love with the physical scientists because they've provided us so much, like every kind of things that we're enjoying, it's owing to the physical scientists. So we tend to respect them a lot. We respect their work. We acknowledge it all. Social scientists, these are the naysayers. For example, they tell us that television corrupts our morals. Political campaigns render us too cynical to participate meaningfully in our democracy. Parents rely too heavily on televisions or screens to babysit their kids. We tend to readily accept most of the good findings of scientists. The universe is continually expanding. Of course, naturally. At the same time, we tend to be more suspicious of the findings of social scientists. Because what kind of things social scientists tell us? Like, they'll tell you playing with Barbies destroys little girls' self-esteem. Do you think so? Like, obviously you are not into the Barbie phase, but there are a lot of kids who, in your circle, in your neighborhood, in your families, your nieces and nephews, and or any siblings. So if they play with Barbie dolls, does it destroy their self-esteem? Or, for example, social scientists say video games teach violence. That's so 20th century. Or texting, for example, kills spelling and grammar because, like, you use OMG or LOL. Or you say, for example, like, you should use short forms of so many things, so it kills your spelling and your grammar. So social scientists tend to say such kind of things. That's why they are kind of naysayers. So, there is another important difference that we often see between physical and social science. Physical science has allowed us to gain increasing control over the physical world. This control has had direct and very useful consequences for our daily lives. Powerful technologies have been invented that very effectively shelter us from our environment and enable us to do things that would have been seen as magical just a few decades ago, as I just compared with centuries ago, but kind of that. For example, like automatic washing machines, for example, that is there are people from 1950s who were born in 1950s and 60s, even 70s. So for them, the concept of automatic washing machines is kind of like too magical. They still don't get it. Okay, like most of the time, unless they've seen it working in their house and like it's been working couple of time for some time, then they get it. Okay, so so this control has like had direct and very useful consequences for our daily lives. Powerful technologies that have been invented, these were like seen as magic. Okay, but what has social science done for us lately? Is the world, is the social world a better place as a result of social science? Think about it. Do we understand ourselves and others better? Are there stunning achievements that compare to splitting the atom or landing on the moon? Compared to physical science, the social sciences seem much less useful and their theories less practical and more controversial. Why does our society seem to have greater difficulty accepting the theories and findings of social scientists, those who apply logic and observation, that is, science, to the understanding of the social world rather than the physical world? Why do we have trust in the people who yield telescopes and microscopes to probe the breadth of the universe and the depth of human cells, but skepticism about the tools used by social observers to probe the breadth of the social world or the depth of human experience? Why is it so? Can you guess? Think about it. Okay, let me share it with you. See, one important basis for our society's reluctance to accept the theories of the social scientists is the logic of causality. We readily understand this logic. You have no doubt, you had it explained to you during, for example, your school classes of physics or chemistry class. So we'll use a very simple example from those classes. That is boiling water. If we or our representatives, that are the scientists, can manipulate an independent variable, which is heat, and produce the same effect, that is, boiling at 100 degrees centigrade, under the same conditions, for example, sea level every time, then a causal relationship has been established. Heating water at sea level to 100 degrees will cause water to boil. No matter how many times you heat beakers of water at sea level, they will all boil at 100 degrees. Lower the heat, the water does not boil. Heat it at the top of Mount Everest, it boils at lower temperatures. Go back to sea level or alter the atmospheric pressure in a laboratory test, it boils at 100 degrees. This is repeated observation under controlled conditions. Now, throughout the last century, And into this one, some social researchers have tried to apply the scientific method to the study of human behavior and society. An Austrian immigrant to the United States, Paul Lazarsfeld, was an important advocate of applying social research methods to the study of mass media. But although the essential logic of the scientific method is quite simple, its application in the social rather than physical world is necessarily more complicated. Take, for example, the much discussed issue of press coverage of political campaigns and its impact on voter turnout. We know that more media attention is paid to elections than ever before. Today, television permits continual eyewitness coverage of candidate activity, mobile vans trail candidates, and beam stories off satellites so that local television stations can air their own coverage. The internet and web offer instant access to candidates, their ideas, and those of their opponents. Twitter and YouTube let us continually track their every move. Yet, despite advances in media technology and innovations in campaign coverage, voter participation in the United States remains low. Okay. Not since 1968 has turnout in a presidential election exceeded 60%. Even in the 2008 race between Barack Obama and John McCain, which was considered the most technologically innovative entrepreneur voters cast entrepreneurially driven campaign in American political history, only 56.8% of registered voters cast ballots. Should we assume that media campaign coverage suppresses potential voter turnout? This is an assertion that some mass communication observers might be quick to make, but would it be right? How could or should we verify whether this assertion is valid? See, as we will see, the pioneers of mass communication research faced this situation during the 1930s. There were precious few scientific studies but many bold assertions about the bad effects of mass media. A small number of social scientists began to argue that these claims should not be accepted before making empirical observations that could either support them or permit them to be rejected. While these early researchers often shared the widely held view that media were powerful, they believed that the scientific method might be used to harness this power to avoid negative effects like juvenile delinquency. They hoped to produce positive effects such as promoting Americans' trust in their own democratic political system while subverting the appeal of totalitarian propaganda. In this way, scientific research would allow media to be a force for good in shaping the social world. Now, if their dreams had been fulfilled, we would be living in a very different sort of social world. Social scientists would be engineering the construction of social institutions in much the same way that physical scientists engineered the construction of skyscrapers or Mars rovers. But that didn't happen. Why? Social researchers faced many problems in applying the scientific method to the study of social world. When seeking to observe the effects of political news, how can there be repeated observations? No two audiences, never mind any two individuals who see news stories, are the same. No two elections are the same. News stories vary greatly in terms of content and structure. Even if a scientist conducted the same experiment on the same people repeatedly, like for example, showing them the same excerpts of coverage and then asking them if and how they might vote, these people would not now be different each additional time because they would have learned from previous exposure and had a new set of experiences. Rather, most would complain about having to watch the same story over and over. They might say whatever they think the researcher wants to hear in order to get out of the experiment. Now, how can there be control over conditions that might influence observed effects? Who can control what people watch, read, or listen to, or to whom they talk, not to mention what they have learned about voting and civic responsibility in their school, family, religious institutions? One solution is to put them in a laboratory and limit what they watch and learn. But people don't grow up in laboratories or watch television with the types of strangers they meet in a laboratory experiment. They don't consume media messages hooked to galvanic skin response devices, like the devices that take your responses, for example, your sweating and your pulse and everything. Okay? So, or scanned by machines that track their eye movements. And unlike atoms under study, people can and sometimes do change their behaviors as a result of the social scientists' findings, which further confounds claims of causality. And there is another problem. Powerful media effects rarely happen as a result of exposure to a few messages in a short amount of time. Effects take place slowly over long periods of time. At any moment, nothing may seem to be happening. That's all for now. Thank you.